I met a leech who was buying a Valentine's card. He was a sucker for romance. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm going to be a chimney sweep. I said, suit yourself. So I rang up the fire brigade. I said, my pet sparrow is stuck up a tree. He said, sparrows are supposed to live in trees. I said, not Ian. So I took up arable farming, but I came at a cropper. This bloke said to me, he said, do you want to scrape both your knees? He was a double grazing salesman. Now, no comments about the fact I'm Chinese and I pronounced it grazing, not glazing. So I went to the petrol station. I said, fill her up. When I came back, he was stuffing my wife's face with cream cakes. Oh dear. This turkey challenged me to a fight. He threw down the giblet. I saw this angry Veruca. He was on the walked path. Oh dear. So I went on a date and all we talked about was wooden leg extensions. The conversation was stilted. I'm looking for a house at the moment. It's my house. I've forgotten where I live. I spent the whole of today pruning. I was just chucking prunes at people. Don't do that. Unless you can run faster than them. So I was on this train. I said, I don't think much of this bunk bed. He said, that's the luggage rack. This bloke said to me, he said, do you ever talk off the top of your head? I said, no, halfway down at the front. I went on holiday with my horse. It was self-cantering. Oh dear. So I said to this bloke, I said, when I was on holiday, I stayed in a bed and breakfast. He said, half bored. I said, no, I was totally bored. I was a rubbish church window cleaner. I got rid of all the stains. This bloke said to me, he said, shall we talk about diaries? I said, let's. That's spelled L-E-T-T-S. So, the first one. My girlfriend is covered from head to toe in grass. Her name's Lorna. Oh dear God. Okay. Me and my mum don't get on. We never argue, but if a bus stops in front of us, we don't get on. Okay, next one. My uncle's mad because he wears a wiggly jacket, whereas my auntie, she wears a straight jacket. I entered a competition putting sails on boats. It was rigged. So I went down the local hotel and I said, can you put me up? And he nailed me to the ceiling. I've got a friend who puts plaster of Paris on my face, waits for it to dry, and then hits it with a chisel. He cracks me up. My horse, he doesn't go out much. He's a Shire horse. So I went to the hair salon, and my dad's sister came in spinning round in circles. I thought, oh my giddy aunt. So I said to this bloke, I said, I'm going to Buckingham Palace to do Prince Philip's hair. He said, have you got a permit? I said, no, I've just got to take a bit off the back. I said, do you like my shirt? It's covered in pictures of cactuses. He said, cacti? I said, never mind the tie. What do you think of the shirt? So I was playing the piano in a bar and an elephant walked in. As I was playing, he started crying his eyes out. I said, do you recognise the tune? He said, no, I recognise the ivory. Why don't eggs tell jokes? They'd crack each other up. I don't trust stairs, they're always up to something. What do you call someone with no body and no nose? Nobody knows. Did you hear the rumour about butter? Well, I'm not going to spread it. I need a drum kit. Why couldn't the bicycle stand up by itself? It was too tired. What did one hat say to the other? Stay here, I'm going on ahead. Oh God. Why did Billy get fired from the banana factory? He kept throwing away the bent ones. Dad, can you put my shoes on? No, I don't think they'll fit me. This bloke said to me, he said, I once got my dog to retrieve a stick from 100 miles away. I said, that's a bit far-fetched. I don't like my hands. I always keep them at arm's length. Okay, number 3. This reporter said to me, he said, how would you describe the absence of Halley's flaming meteorite? I said, no comment. I'm amazed how many people go to Ascot when it's windy. Still, hats off to them. Me and my brother inherited some furniture from the local zoo. I'm glad to say I got the lion's chair. In 2002, the Queen had been on the throne for 50 years. Would you believe it? This bloke said to me, he said, are you a high flyer? I said, no, I tend to hand out flyers at waist level. I went to the haberdashery, I was looking for a cheap frill. I went down the local opticians. I said, have you got a contact lens solution? He said, what about laser surgery? I fell in love with a clumsy cleaner. She swept me off my feet. I saw a coconut flavoured biscuit playing football. It was Wayne Macaroni. So I went to the chemist. I said, give me some rat poison. He said, I'm sorry sir, but we only sell things to unblock your nose. I said, I know that, but I've got a rat up my nose. Okay. This bloke said to me, he said, I live in the sky with a Swiss clock. I said, you're in cloud cuckoo land. I once tried to hang myself with a clip-on tie. Broke both my legs. I used to file my nails, but then I thought, what's the point in keeping them? Exit signs, they're on the way out. Black Beauty, he's a dark horse. So I went down the local department store. I said, have you got any neck curtains? He said, no, they've all got VAT on them. I said, that's gross. I said, I can't decide whether to buy this bed or not. He said, do you want to sleep on it? I said, of course I do. I said, how much is it? He said, $98.99. I said, make your mind up. I'm against the arms race. It's bad for your elbows. This bloke said to me, he said, do you have any strong political views? I said, no I don't, you capitalist Europhobe. I rang up pest control. I said, vermin? He said, no, he just left. I threw a stick in the sea and a round floating object brought it back to me. I said, there's a good boy. What kind of car does an egg drive? A Volkswagen. Dad, can you put the cat out? I didn't know it was on fire. How do you make 7 even? Take away the S. How does a taco say grace? Let us pray. God, this is old. What time did the man go to the dentist? Come on, you know it. 2:30. Why didn't the skeleton climb the mountain? It didn't have the guts. What do you call it when a snowman throws a tantrum? A meltdown. How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh? 10 tickles. The other day I sat on a hairdryer. That put the wind up me. So I was lying in a bath of meths, and my girlfriend rang up and said she was lying in a bath of paraffin. I said, I'm with you in spirit. I've got a friend who's a very tall blade of grass. He's easily swayed. This bloke said to me, he said, I bet you can't name a famous Egyptian landmark. I said, that's what you Sphinx. My dog's bark is worse than his bite because he hasn't got any teeth. And when he barks, people's ears explode. I saw a 20-foot parrot the other day. You could knock me down with a feather. I said, how much is it? He said, $98.99. I said, make your mind up. I'm against the arms race. It's bad for your elbows. This bloke said to me, he said, do you have any strong political views? I said, no I don't, you capitalist Europhobe. I rang up pest control. I said, vermin? He said, no, he just left. I threw a stick in the sea and a round floating object brought it back to me. I said, there's a good boy. Then a bag of cement went past at 100 miles an hour. I thought, that's quicksand.